All right, I believe it's 6 o'clock, and I think we've got Charles, John's here, Mark, Dr. Browning, Wanda. Who are we missing? I think we've got everybody. Alfonso, yeah.
There he is.
on.
There he is. All right. You sure and mute if you're not talking. Hearing what's going on in your home. I've heard some interesting stories from school teachers. All right, we will call the meeting to order for the Budget and Finance Committee for the City of Sunset Valley on the 16th at 6:02. Committee members, this is meeting 5. We have 2 left. 2, maybe 3, depending on how these next ones go. But we're making good headway. Before we get too far on, I want to acknowledge Ray Jean for her 20th anniversary yesterday with the City of Sunset Valley.
Woohoo!
Woo!
There you go, Regine.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
You're awesome.
Thank you. I'm passing the torch on to Susanna, though. Here you go, Susanna. That was easy.
That was easy. That's right. All right, on to citizen comments. Do we have any tonight?
I'd like to say something. Thank you
Go
for the newsletter, and ours truly, John Belanca and Pam Belanca, were featured in the newsletter.
I did see that.
It was pretty nice.
Very cool.
Yeah, you're welcome. They looked great.
Pretty good, huh?
Yeah.
You always look good, John.
Oh, Michael.
All right, on to minutes for July 2nd and July 9th. If everyone has taken time to read through those. Are there any motions to accept the minutes? Come on, guys, it's just minutes. Ooh, it's going to be a long night. We can't even get past the minutes. Is there a
I
motion?
don't know where the shyness is coming from all of a sudden.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
All right, there was a motion by Charles Young to approve the minutes, I believe, for July 2nd and July 9th. Is that correct, Charles?
That is correct.
All right, thank you for that. Is there a second to the motion?
I second that.
Thank you, Mark Bruner. Any discussion? Rudy, you're good to go?
They were excellent. Both meeting notes were all excellent.
Awesome. Any other discussion? All in favor say, opposed say nay. All right, motion passes. There we go. That's the quicker way to do it. Unless Sylvia wants a roll call.
Nope, I'm good.
All right. We are now on to the liaison report. Wanda, you are muted.
Well, we did not have a meeting this past week. Our next meeting will be next Tuesday. The agenda is posted, so you are welcome to post comments in the OpenGov portal there. So that is my report.
Easy peasy. And it's only 5 after. All right. Moving on to the meat of it. Suzanne and I had a couple conversations about trying to get the data points together that we've talked about at the past few meetings, and then I will let her review and discuss the sales tax revenue number. Hopefully everybody got that report. It was a multiple page report. Take it away, Suzanne.
Hey guys. Okay, so Sylvia, do you want to put the report on? Or you
I
can
don't
give
have it.
me.
I'm about to make you presenter. There you go.
Oh, okay. Let
There you
me
go.
present. Number one. Okay. Can you guys see that? This is my first time presenting.
You're doing fine.
Can you see my screen here with the sales
Yep,
tax revenue on it?
perfect. Perfect.
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of put in your mind what the sales tax revenue is. We're supposed to talk about it again next week to kind of hone our current projections for FY21. So if you guys would like to go over it and discuss it, let me know where you want to go.
Questions?
We did have a question from Councilmember Rosengarten just a bit ago on the actual revenue projection from 25 or 30. So Councilmember, I'm not sure if you want to raise that issue now or you want to wait until next meeting to discuss it.
Well, we had, oh, go ahead, Rudy.
Sylvia, go ahead and say what was the issue or that I raised? Was
Yeah,
it the
so
email
there was a question as to whether the revenue projection was going to remain at a 25% revenue reduction or
Right.
if we were going to move to a 30% revenue reduction.
Very good, yes. Because that was discussed in the last meeting. Mark Bruno brought it up.
That's correct. And we'll put that on for a decision as an agenda item at the next meeting. My thinking was just give you guys, you just got this, some time to look at it and think about it, and maybe we could talk a little bit about it tonight and formulate an idea between now and next week and make that decision. If you look at the last three, right, so those are the ones that were in the thick of it. Sales for the months of March, April, May. If you just take those three items, the average is about 28%. I'm just looking at general fund, right? It's across the board, pretty close. So just to keep it simple, instead of backing around, I just looked at general fund, but in that percent above and below, and then at the far right column, percent above and below, if you just average those last 3 months, it hits right around 28 and some change. You know, we had talked about 25, maybe 30, trying to be a little more conservative going in. We'll actually plug in a revenue number next week. But we wanted that extra data point that Marky, you talked about. And so we've got that for posting for July for the revenue month of May.
Excuse me, Michael?
Charles?
Charles Goyette. Hey, I wanted to just jump on that point a little bit. You know, that 25% down in March, we have to remember there was just 1 week. You know, that was just 1 week after it was just the last week in March that, that the shutdown, the shelter in place order was made, right?
Right.
You know, the next month to me is more indicative of what we're going to see going forward, especially, you know, if we have another basically shelter in place. I mean, it sounds like that's where California is going, and Texas may not be far behind. And we also have to remember too that in May, you know, that month is where everybody got their stimulus checks, right? So that sort of uptick may have been largely due to the stimulus. So I think the 38% or the close to 40% is much more reflective of what we're going to see down the road in the near future, particularly as this lockdown just continues. It doesn't seem to want to let up. There's a definite pattern here, and we got a second wave. We got it looks like another shelter in place order that's coming down the line, down the pike. I mean, I don't want to be a pessimist here, but I mean, I'm reading the tea leaves. I'm making extrapolations, and the extrapolation is not telling me that things are going to improve. If anything, they're only going to get worse. So, I think 40% is going to be a much more realistic number, but That's my perspective. Thank you.
No, we're all thinking the same thing. Charles and then Terry?
Nope. Actually, I would offer a counter perspective to that.
Okay.
I think that last month probably represents roughly what we're going to see from now on. Yes, it dipped down to 43% in March when we first had the lockdown, when everyone stayed home, right? The month before that, the lockdown may not have happened in the last week of the month, but I know that I and everyone else who worked downtown went home in the middle of the month. You could already see the slowdown happening in February, right, where it dropped 11% because of COVID. People still need to shop. People still need staples. I think it's going to stay roughly at this. The one thing that may affect it is when the stimulus checks run out, right? And we may or may not have another stimulus. The House has passed a bill. We don't know if it's going to make it through the Senate or not. I would suggest, again, that's another data point worth looking at in 2 months. But I don't think it's going to change much from where it is.
Okay. Terry and then Mark.
Terry, you're muted.
Terry, you're muted. Mr. Cowan, you're muted.
I'm on now. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
All right.
So far, it's never hit 40%. So I think that the 40% prediction is extremely conservative, and so I wouldn't use that as a benchmark at this time. I did talk with some people over the weekend, and this is Lowe's data, but it was a manager over there who they actually had one of their best weeks ever.
Wow.
So, and probably it has to do with people spending a lot more time at home and working on home projects and all that sort of thing. I don't think Governor Abbott's going to shut the state down. He's reeling now from opening it too quickly. I wish we had more data points like the rest of you all. It's still unpredictable, but I think it's unpredictable not to exceed what it was the loss in June. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Terry. Mark and then John.
Yeah, and my big takeaway from this is that there's still a lot of unpredictability. Like, even if we use these as sort of a baseline, I think the big unknown or big factor that would impact us more so than even other shutdowns would be how many businesses are going to close down as a result of losing 20% revenue for months, right? That is going to have a bigger impact to us than any kind of like generic or overall look, because if there are a number of businesses that just shutter, they're not open for sales tax and revenue generation, that could cause a significant, variable in this equation. I still tend to think that, that if we can be more conservative, that there's always a ability to build on that, depending on the numbers are. That 28% number that you threw out there, Michael, this variability, sort of to me indicates that we need to be somewhere planning around that number, right? So it really doesn't make too much difference if it's 25 or 30. I would lean towards being a little bit more conservative because I know we can always make that up based on data coming in. But my concern is that there's a lot of unknowns, and it's better to sort of back up a little bit, plan for what we think is going to be essentially a foundation or a baseline that's approximating what we know now, and then make adjustments. But I honestly don't think fiddling with it between 25 and 30% is going to make a significant difference for us. So if I had my preference, though, I'd say let's start with that 30%, so we're at least in the before or ahead of the curve of what these numbers are showing.
Thank you, Mark. John?
Yeah, I'd basically echo what actually two people have said. I echo Charles. He beat me to the punch. March was really bad, right? Our hair salons started suffering from the second week in in March. And by mid-March, they were down to less than 50% customer count. I mean, and it just couldn't get any worse. And it didn't. And we finally reopened. And we're way up above, we're not doing wonderfully, but we're way up above where we were in March and April, obviously. And I think we had to more heavily weight the most recent. It's like a moving average that you kind of skewed and weigh towards the most recent information. It may be hopeful. I'm hopeful that it doesn't get worse, that we stay open, but 25, 30%, I'm with Mark. It doesn't make a lot of difference.
Yeah.
Either's fine.
You know, we're just taking a stab in the dark here, and we're doing the best we can. I mean, the worst is let's just say we missed the mark. That means council has to make some adjustments, and we have to use more reserve, or we maybe need to go back and visit the budget in the first quarter. I mean, right at this point, we're all taking our best guess estimate of what we think is going to transpire, putting that together, hand that off to council, and then, like we said, we'll keep monitoring that very closely as those data points come in, and we may need to adjust accordingly. But
have we had any update on the businesses that have indicated they're not going to be able to come back at this time?
We have had, we've already had preliminary information. Red Robin is not coming back. We already have information. Luby's is not coming back. The bright side to that is we do have prospective tenants already seeking information. They may not be the type of tenants we may want in the longer term, but that's the two major retailers that we do already have information on. Spectrum had slowed their tenant finish out before the event. They have picked that back up. So the Spectrum store is expected to be finished by the end of the summer. And any of the other smaller retailers, you know, we see everybody still trying to do curbside or some modified version of. So that's the information that we have thus far.
What about Kohl's? Are they planning to come back?
I don't have any information from Kohl's. Kohl's is doing a modified curbside.
I rode down the west side of that strip over there where Home Goods is yesterday, and there are 5 of those shops that are closed up and empty.
Pier 1 is also liquidating, but they're still sort of hanging on by a shoestring. But Pier 1 is a longer term retailer also that will end up going away.
yeah, I heard they were closing down all their shops.
Well, I agree with Charles and Mark. I think 40% is going to be closer to the mark because I think there will be other businesses, particularly the small businesses, that can't come back.
You may be right. Depends on how long this goes on. There doesn't seem to be any relief in sight. So anyway,
Well, now there's so much fear created among people that they really don't care anymore because they're getting so much messages because of the upcoming election. It's obfuscation and half-truths, and there's not a lot of science driving what's happening now. There's a lot of good science, for instance, that says that the masks are of no benefit, and it's been proved in Sweden and Italy and Norway. There's no difference in their rate. And some of them were using masks and some of them never used masks. So I think people are scared. And I noticed when we drove to northern New Mexico that even in the little teeny town, people were wearing masks. So they're really, it's gotten their attention now. And I don't think this is going away for some time.
well, and that's maybe a good case, Dr. Browning, for being on more on the conservative bent. That maybe, you know, Charles's number, Mark, like you said, 25 and 30. It's not a big. We just be more cautious. But anyway, we've got time to think about that. you guys have got all the data there, so you can crunch the numbers between now and next week. But we'll make a decision then and then plug that into our sheets. And then by the time council comes around to make that decision, they too may want to adjust that and make some changes. I think their task is going to be a little more challenging than it's been in the past as well, because we're going to have more information, right, as we're progressing through this year. We're doing our best guess estimate at this point, and then we'll hand that to them. Any other questions for Suzanne? All right. Susanna, thank you for pulling that together.
Yeah, no problem.
Anything else you'd like to cover before we move on from that?
I can't really think of anything.
Excuse me, Michael?
Charles?
I have one more question for Suzanne. That the attachments that were included in our email, the very last sheet, sheet 6, I don't quite understand this sheet, what it's trying to tell me. Special purpose district tax sales. Suzanne, would you mind just addressing this sheet, please? And maybe I'm the only one in the group that doesn't fully appreciate this information, but I don't know how to use this information. I don't know what a special purpose district sales tax is. Am I missing something?
So this is just kind of a totals of what we've gotten so far. So the sales and use tax, this is here. This is the total amount that we got for July, and then that was divided between general fund 80%, street fund 13.3%, and green tax 6.66%. And then the special purpose district tax sales and use tax, which is quite a mouthful. That's actually crime control.
Oh, okay.
So
All
that's
right.
where it's like a special tax on its own. It's not technically part of the sales and use tax.
I thought the general fund was 75% because it's 1.5% based on a 2% tax rate, right?
I am not 100% sure how much the tax is. Regine, do you know that one?
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you're good.
So the tax rate is calculated based on a 12-month percentage. To be quite honest, I haven't had to explain it in so long. I'm trying to have a hard time come up with it, but it's not 75%. It's 80, and then it's the other is broken down accordingly. There's a formula I have to use, which I do not have, and I have to get. But I can send that to you, Charles, and it'll show you how we break that down. I can send it to everybody, but I don't want to try and put it together because I can't remember. I haven't had to do it in so long.
So if I may just add, again, I don't want to complicate things or drag this session down, but general fund is 1.5%, right? We get 1.5% of sales that goes into general fund. The street fund is 0.25% or 1/4%. The green or the venue tax and the other tax, or the crime tax, they're each 0.125%, right? So you add them all up, you get 2%. Is there any other tax that, how do you get 80% out of 1.5% based on a 2% total tax? Is there?
It's based on the total tax, not the city's portion. So I really don't know how to explain it to you verbally like this. I'm going to have to show it to you on a sheet of paper, which I'll have to get to you tomorrow. It's not complicated, but it's not easy to explain verbally like that.
Okay. Am I the only one that doesn't understand this? Am I the stupid one here? I mean, if everyone else understands, I mean, then yeah, give me the sheet and I'll figure it out. But I thought maybe.
Yeah, that's good. It's a good question, and like I said, it's been a long time since I've had to explain it, and Doesn't hurt to go over it again. No question is stupid. So there you go.
I was just
I'll
curious
get
if,
that. Yep.
if other people didn't understand it as well.
Well, we've marked,
The difference is
we've marked through
because
that formula before, Charles, so I don't remember. Regine did it with us once.
so Charles, where the 80% comes from, it actually is because you're including the crime control tax in the calculation, but it's a separate. You consider separate. So when you see those numbers off to the right, where it says 80%, 13.33, 6.67,
Right.
that all totals 100%, but it's not, it doesn't include the crime control tax. So
Okay.
That's
There
where
you
80%
go.
comes from.
There you
So
go.
basically
Okay.
you divide 1.5 divided by 1.875, right? And that gives you
Right.
the 80%.
All right. There you go. Got my answer. Thank
Okay,
you,
that was
Mark.
easier than I thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, at the last meeting, we talked about spending a few minutes in OpenGov and getting to understand that a little better. So with that, Suzanne's going to do a little walkthrough for us.
Okay, I'm gonna try and do this from like the very beginning so everybody knows how to just basic login. So you just go to opengov.com, log in, and I created a test account so it'll be able to see what you guys see when you log in, because my administrative view is a little bit different. So this is just my little test account here. And when you first log in, this is what it's going to look like. I don't know how many of you haven't logged in at all yet, but if you have any issues logging in or need a new password or anything, just let me know and I'll be able to help you on a one-to-one basis. What we've been doing for the most part is we've been in budgets. And you might have seen Sylvia pull this up on the screen a few times during some of the meetings. But the budgets are divided by fund. And then in each fund, this is where the departments are going to be. They'll be in expenses and revenues. So the expenses, these are going to be what we've gone through so far. You can click on these and it'll show you the line items and the historicals on them, plus descriptions of what's over here on the side. It's basically what you've been getting in your spreadsheet, but in a digital format. It's a little bit easier to use in this way because you can move it around, you can look at it in different ways. Personally, I find it a little bit easier, and I understand that not everybody is as familiar with it as I am or as comfortable with it. But if you work in it a little bit and get to know it, it's very intuitive, it's very easy to use. So in here, you also have the ability, to leave comments. So say that you're going through one of the items and you're like, oh, this one looks weird and I want to know why we did that differently. You can just add a comment here and it'll show all the comments from everybody so far. It'll also show individually each fund and how much the balance is so far with the adjustments we've made. So currently in general fund, we've got a surplus. So that's kind of budget at a glance. You can also look at just specific line items. It'll bring you up everything over here. If you prefer looking at it that way rather than through each proposal. Does anyone have questions about the budget portion? I'm not hearing anything, so I am going to go to reports, which personally I think reports is the most useful item for analysis in the budget that we have now. So my report for budget is called FY21 Budget Report. And this one shows all of the revenue and expenses that we have. It shows basically the budget in that budget sheet, but in a way that you can manipulate it to get exactly what you want. For instance, I've heard people say that it's look at each individual item spread out across all of the different funds. Like, for instance, I heard people talk about urban forestry. So you can go through here, right there. That will show you in here how much the total urban forestry is and departments you're going to put it.
Susanna, we're having a little bit of trouble with your audio. It's
Yeah, you're breaking up.
coming in and out.
Oh, I don't know how to fix that. Are you still having issues?
No, that's good.
Better? Okay,
Yes.
let me know if it starts happening again. I'm on the phone because my computer doesn't have a mic, so
Oh, okay.
that might be it. Okay, so what's one of the ones that goes across all the departments? Let's go with, I know there's a lot of them from Public Works that went across multiple departments. Let's just look at a salary.
Suzanne, I'm sorry, can I jump
Yes.
in with a quick question? I was looking at this earlier, and one thing that I found to be inconvenient is that the 2019-2020 budget is not included in that list of items. So I couldn't tell from, the new budget versus last year. I couldn't make those correlations. I had to jump back 2 years, right? From two.
So the only reason that one isn't in there currently is because we don't have actuals on it yet. I can, if that would be helpful for you, I can put in the projected for 2000, the current year that we're in for 20.
How do
if
the
that
rest
would
of
be helpful, I can.
How do the rest of the people feel about that? I think that would be helpful because then we get to scale it back through all the years, and we don't have a gap, and we can see how expenses, revenues have changed. I mean, granted, it's not, it's projected still for that year, but I think it would be useful.
Yeah, absolutely. Susanna, you said earlier in the budget portion, what we look at, is what we're seeing now different than the quote budget portion?
This is exactly the same as what's in the budget. So what you see in your spreadsheets and what you see in the budget tab over here should match what's in here. I have to separately publish it after each meeting to make sure that it matches. So it won't match like immediately after we change some budget numbers in the meeting together, but I usually go through the next day and change it to match what we decided in the budget meeting.
Mark?
Yeah, I would echo what Charles said, because I think one of the nice things about the spreadsheets that are sent out is they have the projected numbers, and we can compare that against the budget forecast and then what the spend is planned to be, and then against, because we use that a lot. I think, Michael, you use that a lot when you're comparing, saying, how much are you actually planning on spending versus what do we need in our budget based on, our actuals.
My only caveat to that, you guys, is that remember that the current projections are
Somebody needs to mute. I can't hear kids. Okay. Did you guys hear that? Okay.
Yeah, actually, it showed that it was Regine. If she could mute, that'll probably go away.
Okay. Quiet now. Okay, Mark. Sylvia, you can finish up there. I agree with you as well, Mark.
Yep. So my only caveat to that was that the projections for 1920 have been drastically reduced because of COVID. So they're going to be very skewed. Yes, they're helpful in the worksheets, but what we found is that as we're looking at them, for example, there's a lot of repair and maintenance that shows almost nothing planned for this year, and that's surely because we've stopped everything in our tracks. So as long as everybody's aware of that, that's fine. She can add another column.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Michael.
Just like, and Sylvia, I think we're all aware of the anomaly that's going on right now, right? It's way out of the norm. But just going forward, I think in future years, in terms of a tool that helps us understand, well, what did we budget? What did we really use? And if we begin to see a trend there, again, the idea was not to try and tie up funds in a budget item that never gets used. And we always say, well, if we don't use them, if we don't spend them, we won't use them. Well, the idea is not that. And the idea is to try and get that number down to what it really needs to be. I understand we cut way back on a lot of stuff, and that's a somewhat skewed number. But yeah, I agree with Mark and Charles. Maybe going forward, that would be something I think, if this is the tool we're going to use of the future, that would have that data in there.
Excuse me,
I
Michael?
can add that one in.
Yep, that's a very easy add.
Could we have two columns, perhaps? You know, the column, the original projections and the adjusted projections. I mean, you know, it's just data, right? Just bits. They don't cost anything. I think that would be helpful to me. I mean, you know, it's a real, very much an overview kind of presentation, and that an extra column wouldn't jazz my mind. I mean, I could deal with it, and I think it'd be useful.
Yeah, I can add it and make it look just like the columns on the spreadsheets you guys have. So it'll go in the same order.
Yeah, as long as they're properly labeled, right?
Yeah, that was one of the goals we wanted to have in the beginning, was if we were going to use open government, the data that we were getting on these sheets, we found to be very helpful for us to understand the analysis that was going on there. And if we could get that information into this tool that you've got, then that satisfies the goal. But we were losing some things, like Charles pointed out. We lost what was adopted and what was suggested, what the anticipated amount was going to be for the year. We lost that. So that's why we keep kind of going back to these sheets. We found that to be a very helpful tool in our analysis in the past. And if we can add that, Susanna, that'd be great.
Yeah, no problem. Okay,
so
is
that means we'll have two columns?
Yeah, it'll show up over here. So there'll be 2018/19 budget, and then it'll go to 19/20 projected, and then 19/20 actual. Or sorry, projected and budget.
Beautiful.
Right, adopted and then projected, right. Cool.
Okay, did anyone have any other questions? Anything you want to see on here?
One of the other trends that are on the sheets that we look at are percentages of increase, right, over the year. When we see a number over time, and if you look at the sheet, you'll see that it's the sheets that we've got, increase or decrease over a 5-year span, right? From 15 to 19 or wherever that might be, because what we were looking for was what kind of stair-stepping increase we were seeing with that expense item. Is it trending at 3%? Is it trending at 5%? Is it trending at 8%? And those things that seem to trend outside of what we were trying to keep the budget increase at, right? Our long-term plan back in the good old days, we were trying to keep it at 2 and 3%. But what we're also having trouble with was identifying what things that were in the budget were driving past that number, right? So, for example, fire protection. If fire protection or healthcare costs were running at 10 and 12%, then we've got to adjust some other things back to compensate for that, right? To keep that overall number down. And so that's where that number came from. Regine can probably share some of how that came to be with you, Susanna, in the past. It just helped us see what the trends are. They go, and there's always little anomalies, right? Where one year we did something unique, and okay, we could see that if we looked across at the expense items, here's a bubble that drove that average up. But when you're looking at line after line after line after line, like we do, I just found that to be a helpful tool as a reminder what's going on within this expense item. And we might stop and say, hey, why is this trending at 8%? Why is this trending at 12%? So that was one of those columns that you don't see in OpenGov that we have on our sheet that helped us just have an idea of what was going on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've worked on that a little bit with Regine, and I will show you guys here in OpenGov, it's not the exact percentage you were looking at, but it does, at least not over a span of 5 years, I think is what she was doing before. But this one does show us percent change between each year. So, for instance, between 18-19 and the proposed 21 budget, there's a percent change of negative 89.69% in public works. And that's just because we moved it into all of the different departments, as you see here, but it also shows you a percentage of how much is in public works versus how much is in all of the other departments as well, which is that 10% number. And that'll show you for each separate little item the same difference that you have there. And I can probably look into something to see if there's a way that we can get the analysis you guys are looking for, that percentage change over multiple years, and see if we can get that in here. Because I think that would be helpful. And if you guys use it for your analysis, that would be something that I would want to put in here.
Yeah, it's hopeful. A year over trend is okay. It went from this percent to that, but it doesn't help you with a longer picture when you're trying to project out what might be occurring in there. And there may be another way to get there. I don't know. You know, you might come up with, okay, you know this tool better than we do, so there might be a better way to get there graphically and as a line item on this sheet.
Anyway.
Anyway.
And I've only been using it for like less than 3 months now, so I'm sure there's more things I can learn about it. And I'm guessing that by next year I'm going to be a whiz. So I'm sure I can find something and make it even better than what it is now.
Okay. And committee members, again, just a reminder, we've talked about this a couple of times. Be sure you jot some things down, so we'll have that meeting after all this is over where we'll kind of go back and say, okay, what did we like? What did we didn't like? You know, what can we do to tweak this and make it better for next year?
Excuse me, Michael?
Charles?
It sounds like that capability you're asking for would be something that OpenGov would have available as some kind of macro. You know, I can imagine that to be the case. I mean, this is sounds like a pretty sophisticated tool. I would think it would have that kind of provision. So just the keyword, a macro, may be what you would look for in terms of using this tool. By the way, speaking of using this tool, is there, and I probably should know this, reflect that I haven't used it enough, but is there some kind of user guide or some instruction manual that accompanies this tool?
They have a pretty extensive help desk. So their resource center has a ton of articles and stuff based on like getting started, and then like a lot of it mostly pertains to the administrators, like how to create things and stuff, but there are a lot of resources in there for the end user as well. If you were trying to figure out how to do something, it's really easy to come up here and like search it, and it'll help you find out whatever, because I've used this a lot and it actually has a lot of information in it.
Okay,
So we did create a quick start guide that was going to be submitted to all of the committees. And then when we decided to do paper, we didn't send that out, but we can certainly send that out. It's, I think, Michael, you have it and so does Wanda. It's maybe 4 or 5 pages and it has screenshots of what you should be seeing to jump into each. We can certainly send that out to all of the committee tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, I tried to do both and just thought, let's stay with for this year.
Then as far as the percentages year over year, Susanna has the ability, the tool has the ability to create any kind of specialized view that you want to see. If Susanna, if you jump into report, you are in report. So there's a report called a next gen report that is even more sophisticated than this, and we may have to jump to that one for the percentage one that you'd like. But we'll explore that. And the as she showed you, the percentage over year to year is embedded within each of the actual columns. But we'll work on that for you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Suzanne. Sylvia. All right, we'll move down to item 7. Review and discuss the 21 budget summary sheet. This was again something we talked about a couple weeks ago. Charles, you had a good question on that. Susanna?
So I've updated it based on our numbers that we decided on in the last meeting. I have it up here. You guys should have gotten it in an email too and had a little bit of time to look at it. So does anyone have any questions or anything on it? You guys want to discuss it?
Well, walk us through what you have.
Oh, sure. So we have this right here is what we are projected to have in the balance or in the bank at the beginning of FY21. So here's what we show as a total of 23.6 million around. And then for the rest of the year, we've got estimated revenues. This ties into all of the sheets you guys have as well, so it updates automatically after each meeting. Here's our estimated revenues for the year, our estimated expenditures for the year, and I did a little extra view of what the FY21 revenues minus expenditures would be in each individual fund here. So you get kind of like a mini fund balance there. And then the end of the year, what position we should be in. So this is what the reserves would look like after our budgeted, what we have budgeted for FY21.
So as we've been finishing those expense sheets, you've been adjusting this one?
Yes.
Terry?
Couple of things. So this is adjusted through what day? It's updated to.
It's adjusted through our last meeting. So I updated this on Monday, I think.
Okay. I I'm going to ask a Charles question. He asked some excellent questions. And it has to do with the crime and control tax fund. Specifically, that it's showing a loss on the profit loss part of this report, $113,000 or $119,000 loss. And when we went through the PD department, I didn't pick up on that they were going to be running at a loss in their fund. So I wondered if you could give us more information on that.
Yeah, I can show you in here. Here it is. So this is what you guys should have currently for crime control. I put the proposed revenue up here, and then we also have the expenses here with that loss. So it shows it on there, but there's two separate places because all of police department is a mixture of crime control and police department. I'm sorry, public safety from the general fund. So crime control is its own separate fund, and then we also have the public safety fund as well that's funded through the general fund.
So it's important to remember that fund is also affected. I mean, it's sales tax driven, it's sales driven. So any dips affect that fund dramatically. And we've made adjustments, but I do not believe that I don't believe the total fund was adjusted by that $119,000 loss.
Huh. Could you say that again so I can follow it?
So normally that fund is closer to $400,000, but that fund is also 410. That fund is also projected to have a decrease because of sales going down. So it went from a 400, it lost almost $97,000 or so in the revenue projection. So it has somewhat of a fund balance, but yes, the expectation is if all things remain the same and there are no additional cuts in public safety, that fund will be required to dip into reserves by that amount.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman. Hello?
I think you're muted, Michael.
Hello?
Go ahead, Alfonso.
Okay, I would like to give it to Suzanne one suggestion. This table is one abstract. So they gave it to us the first time, and after we made some change, they gave it to us the second. So if she can put together, you will see the difference. So for example, when we are looking, how much money does the city anticipate? If she can put one of that, will be easy because you will follow me. So if she put that, the budget summary, Suzanne?
Can you pull that back up on the
Summary, yeah.
Budget summary. So in the budget summary, the first session that we have that numbers. So for example, how much money does the city anticipate to collect? So the first, and you have that the first time, the big total was $6.9 million, the total. Now is 7,256,000. But why? So we came to utility fund, and in utility fund used to be $1.5 million, and now is $1.7 million. It's very difficult if you don't have that numbers, then we'll understand this. And it's not only the exercise to do numbers, it's to understand from where it came. So for example, revenue between the first part and this, then they show us today, we increased almost $200,000. It was in utilities. But you don't know because you don't have the reference number from the last time. If you will go to the next group, then they say, how much money do the city expect to spend? In that, general fund was now less than was the first time. The first time was $3.8 million. Now it's 3.6.
Right.
The utility fund was 1.5. Now it's 1.8. So if you are looking all of that numbers, this is the adjustment that we are doing when we discuss. So from the discussions that we have the first session, she made all of that change. But for everybody, it's impossible to understand because you don't have that reference. At this moment, I have that reference in my computer, so I can see that. But I think Suzanne, she can do that. So everybody, when they will have the next meeting, they will understand from where came and why that came in that number. So that is very, very good because we increased almost $180,000 from the first time to the second time as a big total. On the bottom, the how much money does the city expect to have at the end of the year? The estimate before was 22,819,000, and now is 23,084,000. So from where, if she's more specific from the top, you will understand. So I think for me, I am only giving to you words, and you don't understand my words because you don't have that reference. But if they put together the first time and the second time, it's the same that we used to do, Michael, when we used to have, from that time was that, and now is that. Easy, we will detect. It's impossible that we will have a memory that we remember what happened 2 weeks ago and last week, and we can see that immediately. So I suggest that if they can put some ordinates, or how can I say, in vertical, all of these from the first session, all of these from the second session, you will see the difference. And if she will have one for the next time, you will see the others. So you will see how that is working and how we advance with our budgets, everybody. At this moment, it's impossible. Now, I couldn't talk before, and the other was for the tax. So the explanation that they gave it to you for the tax, before, they used to be only 1.875% tax before the crime. So that was 100%. So this is why at that time was 80% general fund, 13.3 street, and 6.67 green. So at that time, as percent was because the big total of tax was 1.875. When they have the maximum tax, that is 2.0, the other 1.25 gave it to us 2%, but it's different because they didn't use as a percent. It's not any other formula. It's that simple, and they never change. And the 100%, as Charles, he mentioned, was for the 8.875% tax. That used to be 100%. Now we change because it's different criteria. But coming back, Michael, if you will have that number, so everybody in the way that I say it, I think that will be more simple. This is that I try to say.
So if I'm understanding correctly, we would add a column, a couple of columns that show the delta over week to week with an explanation of what changed?
Yes, Sylvia, because this is a summary. This is an abstract. So with this abstract, I have columns, and I can tell you the first session that we have and how that changed the second session, and sounds logical. So that doesn't mean that you will present in that way at the end of the budget, but this is a working budget, and that will help, Sylvia. Did you catch that?
Yes.
I suggest that. It will be more simple for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Alfonso. Mark?
Yeah, I agree that it would be nice to have like kind of a snapshot for each week and then some notes about what changed, because this is a useful tool. Like I think several had said before, that just being able to see the summary view, I worry about this being, summarizing too much summary, because I think in general, we know that these numbers are changing because of the adjustments we're making from week to week. But if there is a way of preserving that data, or at least even including some commentary, just to make sure that there's, a capture of that, I think that would be beneficial. One question I was going to follow up with, and Sylvia, this may be a question for you, because looking at and also Terry, I just wanted to also speak to your point. We did talk about this a little bit during when we're reviewing the crime control, that essentially what we're doing is we're dipping into the reserves this year for that fund. And that's an option for us in all funds, right? It's just that one is the one that the budget, is doing that for us based on the way it's built. We didn't cut down anything to get us down to the point where we weren't. So that's something we can revisit or talk about. But, essentially every one of these funds has a reserve as indicated by here, and we're eating away at them in some cases. In some cases we're not touching them yet, like the general fund and things like that.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. The alternative to not dip into the general fund would be an increase to not dip into reserve would be an increase from the general fund into that fund, or a decrease of expenses within the public safety budget.
One question I had looking at these is, because I know we talked about this, but I kind of lost track of where it's going to be actually recorded, is for the new contract for the, I guess the media group or the advertising group. Where is that going to come out of? Because it's not listed in the hotel loss this year, right? You look at that, or the expenditure this year, because it's only $106,000. Where's the money that the contract that we're about to enter into? Is that hot funds, or is that somewhere else?
No, it's hot funds. It's hot funds. Hot funds was expected to be drawn down this year already. It's included in the drawdown. So I don't know, Susanna, can you show the hot fund sheet?
Yeah, I don't think it's in that 106,000, because that's just what we reviewed. It's the 49, 15, and 41. So the media company that we're working with, that contract's not in this bronze budget, it looks like. And I just had a question about.
It's in that FY20 adopted budget. So if you see that this year we were already projected to draw down 138,000. Obviously the drawdown is going to be it might be a little bit larger because we haven't received everything that we were going to receive or anticipated to receive from the hot tax. But then also Sunset Valley the Arts Fest came in a lot lower. I think it at like $40,000 lower, maybe.
I guess just looking at FY21 proposed, that there's nothing there for that line
No,
item.
because we expect to encumber that amount. We don't expect any additional from 20. So I see what you're saying. We should probably put a note there that there's an encumbrance.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And back to Alfonso's point, I think these have been helpful in terms of weekly, but we could probably add those other columns for the other week that's gone by so we can see the trend there. I think that was the intent.
Yep, Delta week over week is very helpful. And for us, when Susanna goes into OpenGov, we can see the activity that happens. So we take for granted that you guys don't have the same granular data. So
Also, if we could date those columns on when they come out, it would help.
Yep.
I've got several of these and I'm having to write the dates on them so I can remember what's what.
Question?
Charles?
About this this summary. Thanks, Alfonso, for adding that historical note to my last question. But looking at this summary, again, the new guy, right? Just the committed and non-committed. I'm curious what exactly that's all about. And before that explanation happens, just a note on reserve and the fact that reserve has always been related to the general fund, right? And for the longest time, that's all I believed we had for a city in terms of reserve. But as it turns out, we have this restricted for specific purposes column, which is a reserve nonetheless. I mean, right? It's still a reserve. So maybe we need to distinguish, or make it known, more readily known, what reserves we have, and the fact that those reserves have two different characteristics. One associated with the general fund, which is used in one fashion, and another set of reserves that are individual to these other funds that we have, but they're reserves nonetheless. So the city is not $5,208,000 worth of reserve. That translates to what? Maybe getting close to a 1 year reserve type policy, right? But what about all these other reserves, and how does that calculate into things? Anyway, so
some of those in the normal, if we were in private sector business, those would still show up on the balance sheet as income or some other type of revenue stream. They do the same for us. The problem is in the private side, you don't recognize the expense until it's occurred or you've at least engaged in it. We have some things that we have to commit by contractual obligation, whether that is a stated contract or an implied contract. And I'll use our vacation time as a non-contractual, but it's a committed expense. So every employee earns time. We have a policy here that now has a cap for how much people earn. If somebody were to leave employment with us, they take what's called with them drag up pay, and we have to pay out their vacation time. We can't take that out of the normal operating budget. So it's what we call in a committed section of the fund. I have to account for it all the time. That's a GASB rule. I can't be left with an unfunded retirement fund, or if we are unfunded over a period of years, the law says I can't fund some of those liabilities over more than 25 and 30 years. So we have to split some of that money up. Restricted for specific purposes, those are really in our specialty funds. I can't use those funds for anything else or I've already entered into a contract, or I have a specific expense that's committed, like I have a liability that is also coming up. So A lot of our normal contracts, regular contracts, have an out. Local governments have that ability. If, for example, we enter into the contract with the marketing firm and something happens and we tank, and we just don't have the money to pay them, most of the contracts for local governments have an off ramp, and it says if there's no budget or no funds, you're let out of the contract basically without a whole lot of ordeal happening.
Okay, thank you. So if I may just add to, or just finish my question in terms of the non-committed, under normal set of circumstances, that money will be expended. So therefore, it's not technically part of our reserve with regard to the general fund, for example. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Gary?
Yeah, I'm going to come back to the replacement and repair fund. And Michael, you may want to look at this more closely next year, I think. But in effect, it's a reserve to replace and repair equipment, things that aren't consumable items. And it has certain guidelines that are written, and it's based on certain cost estimates. And we know that those cost estimates are dated, in many cases are not current. And we also know that there's some flexibility as to the usable life of things. So in effect, there are monies there that could be used if necessary, that would without a large impact on the city. And it would also, I'll just go there. And so I think I'm in the spirit of what Charles is doing, we're looking to get a bigger picture of what funds are there somewhere in these different categories that may be accessed. Like in the case of vacation, all right, sure, that's basically, yeah. And we used to, where I worked, we used to we wouldn't have put it in a restricted for a specific purposes fund. We would have put it on something that was tied back to personnel, but it was the same thing. We had to set it aside in a fund so that we could cover what we owed. So I think what Charles is getting at, and I want to come back to that again, because I'm pretty familiar with this when it was set up, because I was one of the instrumental guys setting that up on the equipment repair and replacement, that is something that can be looked at if some of these more dire circumstances show in terms of revenue projections, and it does get up above 30%, that these things can be looked at. And particularly we can look at where we're taking money out of the other funds and depositing it into that area. So I noticed that in this overview sheet that we are transferring money in to that reserve. Basically, and it's all formulaic and it's all set out and it's all kosher. But I do want us to keep in our minds that that's a place we can go to without hurting the city and cutting services, etc.
We can hold off contributions to those. There are consequences at some point, but it is possible. Charles?
Going back to Terry's question about the CCD fund, I wanted to add a little background. And correct me if I'm remembering any of this wrong from last year, Michael, but as I recall, we made a decision in last year's budget to transfer some expenses from general fund to be covered by the CCD funds for, I believe, and Chief would remember this better than I would, I'm sure, because we were legally obligated to spend that money on things that were related to crime control. Before we'd used it to cover, we'd use it to cover various things while we were building out the new facilities. And the discrepancy, the reason why it's down is because we'd allocated all of that anticipated $400,000 to expenses. And of course, the revenue for it dropped this year.
Exactly.
Yeah, we talked about the danger of that, right? That the original agreement was, or the idea was, we'd use it, and then we'd make it go away. Well, we kept it, and now we're moving things into it. Now we're beholden to it, and we're trapped with these as we continue to do a shell game of moving general operations funds, operation items into these tax funds. If these taxes don't get funded, back to general operations they go. And the impact as time goes on gets bigger and bigger. So, yeah, I would caution council to be very careful about that. All right. We kind of rabbit trailed a little bit, but good stuff. We're moving then on to review, discuss, and possible action on the proposed utility fund expenses. Carolyn, you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can. Good evening.
Can you hear me? Excellent. So we should be having, we have the utility fund budgets, which are going to cover water, wastewater, and solid waste. And they're all three separate kind of budgets. So we can start here at the top with water.
What's a gooner? What's a gooner?
Somebody's on the phone.
Yep. Can
I
you
don't know.
please mute yourselves if you're not speaking?
I don't know. Somebody's on a phone. Okay, Carolyn. Let's
So
try again. Yeah.
Okay, so I thought we would start here with water and just start going through this. And if we have any questions, be happy to answer those.
I'm not asking any questions. I used up my allotment last week.
Okay.
No, please ask questions. We practiced, we prepped. We're ready. We're ready.
I'm mean. I should stop being mean. I'll give everybody else a chance to go before I start.
I will just say, as an all-female staff on this side, we are ready. Bring it.
Bring it. I like it.
I was going to say, Michael, if you want, I can ask all the questions that I knew you would ask.
Well, why don't you take away and then I'll fill in.
If you'd like me to substitute.
Bring it. Carolyn, come on.
You heard them. They said bring it.
Sure, let's go.
All right. First one, 55515. Bank and management fees. We projected an actual of 840 this year, and this is where I'm channeling Michael. The original 2020 budget had $2,000. We've also now allocated again $2,000 in this year. Is there any reason why we need to make it more than the 840 we're projected to spend this year?
So that
I'm gonna toss it
840
in the
is
management
indeed just a projection. Those projections, that was my warning earlier. When we went through and cut everything drastically, that was sort of an across the board cut. So Regine would have to give you where we're going to end up this year. But if you look at all of the historicals in the prior years, it is a lot closer to that $2,000 budget.
I'm just wondering how you could arbitrarily cut bank fees. Don't the banks charge the fee? I mean, how are you able to get that down to 800? I don't.
That's a complete and utter mathematical reduction.
Okay, so it's not really 840.
No.
There you go, Charles.
Okay. Well, it's really the same question for a lot of these items where we've got a projected amount that may or may not be what we're actually going to spend versus what we're budgeting based basically on the 2020 budget. Are there, on any of those items, are there cuts that, given our circumstances, where we're trying to have only essentials, cutting everything to the bone to give ourselves as much room as possible? Are there any of those that can and should be cut?
Yes. So we went through these again with a fine tooth comb. All of what you guys said a little bit before in the repair and maintenance, both equipment, vehicles, and system. So what you see in that column R is actually a mathematical reduction. We knew we were going to have less staff. We knew we were going to do less work. when you look at the historicals, the expenses are there. We're not going to ramp up to the staffing level that we had before, at least not immediately. So one of the things that we talked about was training mileage reimbursement. That amount could be, and that's line number 5815. We have $3,200 in there. Carolyn, your suggestion to roll that back to?
I would say we could roll that back to about 1,500, given our current staffing level. We could easily do that.
And then the same thing for training and education. We don't anticipate having to travel. We do need money in that account, but we're not anticipating doing a whole lot of in-person testing, although the Class C licenses, they will have to drive down to San Antonio, so that comes out of mileage. But most of our things hopefully are going to be virtual this year, so that number also can be reduced.
5820 and 5815, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
I thought we reduced it to $1,000 last meeting.
And
no, we haven't been in this fund yet.
Yeah, that was
different department.
The Public Works Department. But
Okay.
you've got, if you look at 5815, you've got 3,200 in there. Then there's 2,000 more in Public Works. There's 1,000 more in wastewater. So there's really, the total there is $6,000.
Yes, that's correct. Susanna, do you have that column available?
Yes, with one caveat that I've only just kind of thrown it together. I haven't had a chance to go through and really.
Don't bring it up if it's going to bring up. We did start the exercise to show you guys, and it'll probably be in the sheets that you receive tomorrow. We took your comment about how much is it embedded in each of the funds. So there's a column that you're going to see that has a total that's spread across all of the funds. Water licenses are different than wastewater licenses. Tools and equipment is different in the water fund and in the wastewater fund. I know that we're not as big a municipality, but you really shouldn't be using the shovels that you dig poopy water out of to go dig a water line out of. So some of those separations are required by TCEQ. Obviously, we can't have double of everything. So we understand we've had a reduction in staff. And we know some of these items need to be reduced.
Okay, well, I don't want to belabor the point, but I want to go back to 5815. So you're saying you need $6,000 for mileage reimbursement for 5 employees. And in 5820, you're saying you need $8,800 if you add that $4,350 plus the $3,000 in Public Works plus $1,500 in wastewater, you get $8,500, $8,850. Those two items alone for training for 5 people?
So those are the 2 items that we know we can cut. So mileage reimbursement, Carolyn's comment was to reduce that to $1,500. And then training and education of city staff, there are some licenses that need to go. But if you see last year or the year before numbers at $2,500, we're comfortable with that number being also reduced to $2,500.
Are these essential at this time?
The training and education for the licenses, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And I would also add to that is that, so in these areas, we have new staff. We also have staff that we're more generalists now, and we're trying to have that education and have that background. So it is going to be imperative to have those classes in these for these individuals.
Michael?
Alfonso.
Yeah, I can see, if we can see the top of this chart, where you say water department, and you go to the top. Okay, I don't know why, but the information that they sent to my home, I can see in the computer, it has another column, and in that column it say total cost for all instance. What means that, Celia?
That is the column Susanna was working on that shows what you guys wanted to see among all of the funds. Susanna, go ahead and unhide that. I didn't want to confuse them.
Yeah, you don't have that here in that, and you show it is.
There you go.
Okay. Now, what is the meaning of that, please?
That means across all of the funds, this particular item, for example, mileage, if you scroll over to mileage, Susanna, that means in the account number for 5815, in the water budget, there's $3,200, but across all instances, there is $7,350. That is mileage reimbursement across every single department, across every single fund in the city.
Okay, so but you are not counting the police, right?
That's across everything that has a 5815 in it.
Yeah, but this is the number that you provide. But I am asking you if also you're using the accounts of the police.
Yes.
Okay, so it's all the employees.
All the employees.
So we spend $7,350,000 for all the employees. So if you have 14 people in the police and you have 6 people in public works, later we don't have problems between them, because here they are asking for 3,000 and it's almost a half of that. So 50% of the money is in this, but you don't have, only you have 6 employees, you don't have 20.
Correct. That's why in this line item, we said we could reduce it to $1,500.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. This will help us a lot, because now we will understand in printing and publications and that kind of small tools and that kind of things, how that works. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, this is exactly what we've been talking about. Susan and I talked about this today. I think lumping it, since we're just talking about the utilities, street fund, that if we had one sheet that tied these together, because like we talked about, I was having to flip between the sheets and add these different columns up to try and figure out what the total costs were. This is perfect for that analysis.
Not quite. I'm going into OpenGov and I'm running a report that on line items for the bronze budget where I have 5815 and the total is actually $9,100. I think the amount for public works got left out of that total.
Let's see, Susanna, jump over to OpenGov.
Yeah, unless I'm doing this wrong, I went to the budget line items and just said, give me.
You're doing it. That's keeping us honest. I'm glad you're doing that.
Okay. Not that we don't appreciate seeing all the totals, but that one doesn't. That one seems to be missing an item.
Total right there. So you can scroll down. So if you see over to the left-hand side where she says filtered by, it's all funds, and then she has taken the expense to be specific, training and mileage reimbursement. So
okay,
Susanna,
well, there's a discrepancy if you do it a different way in OpenGov.
Are you in the bronze budget?
I am in the bronze budget. If you go to budget, the bronze budget, you go to line items.
Okay, let's see.
And then you go on. Yeah.
Hang on, let her get there. So OpenGov,
Sure.
Bronze, line item budgets, let's see.
Go to line items. Now go account code and do 5815. No, just do the pull down on account code. Right, put in 5815. And if you scroll over, yeah, 9100, which I think is because you're leaving out line item 4, which is public works.
Scroll
I'll have
over.
to look into that and see why it's different.
Shouldn't be. The there's, Mr. Carmona, there's the answer to your question across all funds, but so Susanna, find out what that one is. Why do we have a minus 1750 over to the left-hand side? See that?
I think that's a adjustment.
See, so that would
reduced it
zero
by
it out,
50%.
which would give you the, so that there's an issue right there. That would zero it out.
It wasn't zeroed out, it was reduced by 50%.
Oh, by half, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But that shouldn't be why there's a difference. There's something off somewhere. I hadn't made this column over here available yet because I haven't really had a chance to go through and scrub it and make sure it matches everything else. So take this column here with a grain of salt currently.
Okay,
Fair enough. I work with stuff like this all the time, Susanna, so I understand completely. You've got to vet it a couple times to make sure it's right.
Yeah, I just kind of slapped it together today.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're in agreement that mileage reimbursement can be reduced, and we offered 1,500. Is there another lower amount?
No, we're not negotiating. I just want to know what it's really going to be.
That's hard to tell because I don't know which classes are going to be virtual and which classes, like right now in the middle of COVID, you wouldn't think that we'd be driving to San Antonio or San Marcos to take a test, but that's the only way to do it at this particular point in time for those C licenses.
All right, can we go to 5324? Emergency Response Services, non-city. In fiscal year 2016, we spent $2,500, but you're asking for $25,000. And your descriptor is funds for emergency services such as emergency testing, water leak, repair.
So this is part of, we had this discussion very early on. This is part of our emergency response items. If I need a specialty staff, if I need, for example, one of our public works folks tested positive for COVID, so we had to bring in some a temp pretty quickly, or if I need an emergency contract for water sampling, or I need an emergency contract for flood, or now a pandemic, there's 40,000 spread among all of the funds for that amount. 25,000 is in the water fund.
Charles?
There's also another 15,000 in the water fund for this, for a total of 40,000, which is almost the equivalent of a full-time person. To me, this is in effect saying that we're understaffed. If we have to allocate almost a full-time salary for emergency services, that means we don't have enough people.
Well, it's 40,000 plus 35%. That's what you're not going to get anybody for 40,000, and then you got to add 35% for support. So,
which is why I said almost a full-time person.
You could do
Not to mention it's a hypothetical.
Somebody who has all the expertise that you might need, it's going to cost you a lot more than 40,000 pounds.
So my comment is that even if we were to add additional staffers, we still need an emergency pot. It could be that we come back to council and do an emergency allocation for any of those amounts. That's a very real possibility. Things the mayor could sign under an emergency order. It really is to have that continuity of operations plan in place. I know there was some discussion early on. I think Councilmember Reeds brought it up that really should be zeroed out. And if there's an emergency fund, then it should come to the council for an emergency order.
Yeah, that's what I would recommend. Yes, that's what I would recommend. I would zero it out.
Okay, we'll zero it out.
In both of the funds?
Both funds.
Yes, yes. Sylvia, what is the mayor's spending level or level that she can authorize?
She's got a couple of spending levels. I believe she goes to 49,999. But in emergency orders, there's all kinds of there's all kinds of different rules. So it would really depend on whatever state of emergency is. And during a state of emergency, we can call a one-day meeting very quickly as well.
Right. You can call a council meeting.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but that we would have continuity based upon spending with our policies in place currently.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So what I would say is in the continuity of operation plan, I'm gonna set that. I need to be able to put a time frame. If something were to happen, that how soon we need to bring something back to the council for approval, just so, you know, as things happen, everybody understands it, that we may be calling a 24, 48 hour meeting or approving something after the fact that the mayor has had to sign off on.
I think that would be good. Are you still required under open meetings, the timeframes?
No, the timeframes are suspended. We do have to post. There's always caveats to those things. So we do have to post, we do have to inform, but if it's something that is an emergent situation, then yeah, we can meet sooner than 72 hours.
Perfect, thanks.
So Carolyn, under 5758, repair and maintenance system, there's no description. Can you tell me what that is?
Yeah, so that's going to be an item that is in, you're going to have a repair and maintenance for water and a repair and maintenance for wastewater as well. So that is for any of the repairs that we have to make to the water lines, to valves, to meters, any of that kind of equipment and infrastructure. That's where that's the fund that actually repairs those things when we have issues.
And how did you come up with 25,000? Because you've been spending mid to upper teens.
I think that's going to be a fund. So $25,000, I think, is what has been traditionally budgeted. So it is kind of going mid to upper teens, upper to 21,000. But that is a fund where you need to have money in place so that if there is some kind of, you know, piece of infrastructure, that we have the funds to do it at that time.
Well, I see that 25 was budgeted. You only used 18, but in the fiscal year 18, you used 14. In fiscal year 17, you used 18. Fiscal year 16, you used 19. Fiscal year 15, you used 14. I'm just wondering why we're going from such a substantial jump when there's really no. And what was the analysis to get you from what your average has been to 25?
In the water system, I can tell you the drive had been to identify the water leaks within the meters and those kinds of systems. So there was a plan, and there's been a plan to purchase and change out meters. I can tell you that's a portion of the budget has been padded for that. We're out of the residential size meters, so we will be making a purchase this year. But if the committee is comfortable reducing that to $20,000, I think we could also, if we need to come back for any amount, we will do that.
Well, again, I think providing water services falls into the essential category. So, you know, it's just,
it is absolutely essential. And we do have a requirement within our contract that we continue to do water conservation and that we continue to try to reduce our water loss. But if we need to slow down the meter change out and the meter purchase program, which, you know, is a component of staffing as well, that number could very easily go to $20,000.
No, the point I was trying to make in all this is there's a long list of no descriptions provided. And one of the things that we talked about last year and the year before, and we talked about it ad nauseum, was that if there were adjustments or substantial expenditures, you guys need to give us a little information. And your description was great, and I really appreciate that. But if we could get that stuff before this, I can just blow right by these, and we don't need to stop and talk about it.
And, you know, we actually talked about that, Michael. This is what is the dump that comes out of the MIP system that was being used before, pre-Sylvia, is what I'm going to tell you. So we actually talked about those no descriptions. And then as we were going through those, because again, we're focused on the left side of the sheet. And we thought, oh, let's give them all the descriptions. But if we would have sent a whole new set of worksheets, pandemonium would have happened again. So we thought, well, we'll just face the brunt and answer the questions as they go.
Okay, then that would be my desire next year, that if we're going to embrace OpenGov more, that there's room there. And then during the year, Carolyn or Lynn or anybody in those, as they see that trend coming, if we updated that information so the committee members can just go right down and go, oh, okay, there's your, all right, good, we're moving, let's just move right on. Just a thought.
Yeah, gotcha. No, it's an important thought.
And we are updating those and giving better descriptions. And that's a great thing I think about OpenGov, is that we can kind of do that in the moment as well.
Right. Yeah. Okay, I got to stop at small tools. You know, 35 there, 2,000 in wastewater, 4,000 in public works. You're almost 10 grand in small tools. Help me understand.
Yeah, so
$10,000 for 5 employees year after year of $10,000 worth of small tools. We go around about this every year. I don't get it. I just don't get it.
It's a lot of shovels.
Well,
I know you need more than one shovel. I've heard that tonight. You need 2 shovels. So that's 2 shovels at Home Depot, $5. We're up to 10.
So yes, and small tools isn't necessarily completely related to the number of employees. So small tools, and as Sylvia had alluded to earlier, there's certain things that we can't really cross over. There's certain things in water, wastewater, that you have to have small tools for those specific kind of jobs. We don't want to use the tools that we use for wastewater on anything else. So they have to have their own set of small tools. This also addresses some of what we can consider almost like a consumable, things that we use through small tools that are, let's go with gloves, alcohol for the disinfecting, things of that nature come out of this kind of fund too. And you can see, let's see, it's super tiny on the screen.
Hold on, Carolyn, hold on. So again, maybe we need to retitle that and move it from something other than small tools. And again, a descriptor out here like Lynn has, film and caution tape and all that crap they use all the time that's consumed, right? Rags and WD-40 oil, whatever that stuff is. It just needs a better descriptor, because when you start adding them up and say 10 grand worth of small tools, it creates this picture in your mind of a bunch of little tools, and it's just not a good descriptor. It needs more clarity. And I think these are kind of things that citizens look at and get confused about. What do you mean small tools, $10,000 year after year? It doesn't make any sense to me. I understand what you're saying. I'm just thinking in the vein of trying to have more clarity, right? We could spend a little more time on those descriptors as the year goes on.
Yes, and we're doing that. I've already updated several of these descriptions, because I did, when I went through, I looked and I was like, oh wait, utilities haven't had descriptions, and so we're updating those currently now. And that's true. I think there should need to be some clarity also, like, regarding some of the other items that just need better definitions for you.
Thank you.
Michael. Michael, it's not. You can have another $3,000 is the police, so 9,500 will be public works and 3,000 the police. So I think that again, if they are talking about plastic gloves and, as you say, W40, other kind of things, they are not small tools. They have to be more specific. You're right. Thank you.
Yeah, and if we can get maybe at the end of a 12-month period, just what items were bought and how much they cost, that would be helpful. I use a lot of tools. I can't understand how you can end up with $12,000 worth of tools in a year. You need a building to put them in.
Okay, moving down, that's all I have in water department. Anybody else in water? Moving to wastewater. On page 2, on that 5324, that's the other end of that emergency response that we talked about earlier, right? We zeroed that out. More small tools. Train, the same things with the comments that we had as well, the training, the mileage. I did want to point out uniforms as well. I think you guys, did you look to adjust that as well? I think I added up like $3,800 worth of uniforms.
We did adjust that. We adjusted the major part of that adjustment is actually in the Public Works Department, because that's where we talk about actual like shirts and, polos, the actual like Public Works uniform. In these budgets, so this is one where I say that this could probably use a better definition. It's more of PPE in these areas. So it's the little white suits that they wear to do wastewater work, and those are pretty expensive. So those kind of PPE items are going to be more in this uniform kind of budget in these areas.
Yeah. The only, anybody else in wastewater? The only question I had in solid waste was 5735 equipment rental. That one reoccurs in several different places as well. The total there is almost 13,000 in equipment rentals. Again, maybe that needs more clarity. I think we've got lots of equipment. I don't know what else we're still having to outsource. It's a small number, but anyway, it just caught my eye. Some of these again, and again, there's no description not provided. Description not provided. You're leaving me to try and figure it out on my own. Okay. Any other questions then by anybody?
And we'll clarify those descriptions.
All right, we're through utility fund expenses. We're on to street funds. Caroline, you want to talk a little bit about street funds, how that gets funded, what the expenses are about?
Sure. So the street fund is funded. Oh, sorry, Alfonso, go ahead.
Alfonso?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Michael.
Yes,
they
sir.
have office supplies. They have office supplies. And if we will go to administration, in administration office supplies, they ask for 8,100, and they say that they break that in departments. So these office supplies, we have a total 11,250, and will be 8,100 in administration. And later in water, I don't see nothing in wastewater, and 50 is the 5705. 5705, I don't see nothing in public works. And later you will go to water, 5705, they put $1,000. But the difference here is with Suzanne, is because the total here, they say 13,050. This is the big total, 13,050. And if you will go to administration, in administration, will be, you have 11,250. So they will have this 11,250 plus the 1,000 that they are in water. But they try to say that they want to have as a total in administration. So no in other departments. So they didn't split in that department. So they need to check that because according with the data that she has here, in order to match that, she need to make that adjustments. And it's in the 5705 office supplies. It's no big deal, but they need to adjust. So in that way, we will be reading the same.
Yeah, Alfonso, I think that may have been the meeting that you missed. One of the things we talked about was we drilled into quite a few different items that were in general fund that needed to be dispersed to the appropriate departments. And that was something we all agreed now was the time to break that up, and they were going to do that. I just don't know if that's been done yet.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
You're very welcome. But I think we all agreed it used to be in general funds. It really should be in the department that it's being used in. And so that was the takeaway we had for that.
I agree also. I agree.
Good catch. Thank you. Okay, Carolyn. And I'm sorry I called you Caroline last week. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I get called by, Meredith, all kinds of things, so it's okay.
I don't even think right over here by my computer says Carolyn.
So the street fund is a collected, as part of the sales tax fund. It is a dedicated fund to street repair, street maintenance. So this is where you are going to have the crack sealing of streets, repair of potholes, some of the signage, things of that nature occur here in the street fund. So repair and maintenance of street is going to be that line item. I think it says 5750 on there, and it is listed as $82,000. That may be a little low, but that is the recommendation from the Public Works Committee, and we're going to go forward with that. And if we need to get additional funds at some point in the future, we would go back to council for that.
Can you tell people why there's nothing in fiscal years 15, 16, 17, 18, 19?
Oh, yes, I can address that as well. We have now split the Public Works Department employee salaries across all 7 of the funds in which the Public Works Department works. So there is personnel expenses that are now part of the street fund that had not been previously used, because we do a lot of work in and around the streets. So it is appropriate that this fund actually supports some of the salaries for that work.
Did I beat you to your question, Charles? Charles Goyer. All right. Any questions in 16 on street and replacement, street repair? All right, boys and girls, moving right along. We are on to proposed projects. Carolyn?
So there are several projects that are proposed for the fiscal year 2021. Most of these projects are going to be actually all of these projects will be out of funds that have dedicated reserves and healthy reserves for these particular projects. So, for example, there is funding for, let's just start with streets. There is funding for the Lone Oak Trail street repair. That includes all of Lone Oak Trail, I believe, a mill and overlay. There is also additional funds for the one that says proposed is a project actually, I believe, from 1819 that's kind of been carried over. It's going to be the Ernest Robles Way, Home Depot Boulevard. And for economy project, it's been combined. So both of them have concrete streets, both of them. And so having one project doing both areas at one time will save the city money. So especially the bridge repair on that particular project ranked pretty high by the Public Works Committee, and the street rankings that was the highest ranking project.
Which one?
Going down to the green tax.
The home, hang on, Carolyn, the Home Depot ERW project scored very high. That's the $833,000 one that she's talking about. that has concrete. And so the economy of scale of mobilization of having them replace entire concrete sections in a portion of the bridge section. The Public Works Chair also did a signed letter with his PE on it on that area and some of our other streets that he believes are in need of repair.
Can you explain the scoring system that you have on here?
Where are you?
Sure. If you go to that service, there's a project ranking. So that was done by the Public Works Committee. And basically it is broken out by fund, and they scored each of the different projects in those areas. And those are the combined scores from all the members of the Public Works Committee. So if you go back to that street fund, crack seal ranked the highest. Crack seal is more of a maintenance issue than not necessarily a project. We do crack sealing twice a year. Crack sealing helps to maintain the road and not allow water to seep in and undermine the surface. So it is a ongoing maintenance project, but it is something that's more in that repair and replacement, the fund here that was in the street fund. It's not going to be listed as an individual project. When we go back to that ranking system, you'll see that ERW and Home Depot were the next project that ranked really high in the street fund. And it is a higher priority given that there's issues with some of the wing walls of the bridge.
All right, so when I'm looking at your score column, I'm still not clear on your scoring. One of the lowest number is 16 for the carpeting, but then I see 34 for Valley Creek Park Gabion. So 16 is low, 34 is high. I don't understand your system.
Yes.
I don't. And how do you get those numbers? Where are they from the committee members?
So, yes.
Was everybody
Yeah,
just?
no, but so what happened was, yes, the committee gave them, the committee scored everything based on two categories. The committee scored everything based on like a cost and like a benefit category is basically what it came down to. And
Okay.
so 3 being the higher scoring. So each person who kind of put their vote in could put a possible 6 points toward a different project. So they ranked them into each project individually, and this is how the scoring came out for those projects.
Michael, they also took into account those projects that already had significant engineering or had some other expense that had been planned beforehand, and the project was somewhere in flux of execution. So that's why you see Valley Creek Park Gabion project had ranked so high, because all of the work had been done. We were at the point of letting it out for bid.
Okay, good. That was one of the things we talked about. Well, you've got 20 different items here. What is it you want us to do?
Well, these have already been outfitted, well, not outfitted, but these have already been vetted by both P&E and Public Works. As
Okay.
Carolyn mentioned, these are separate and apart from the general fund. These are in specific funds that have healthy reserves and allocated reserves. Part of where I want to take the budget and finance and our budgeting process is also in capital project planning and longer term project planning. This is really just, we're trying to show you where we're at, and if there's any projects that you believe don't need to be moving forward because of whatever reason, as some folks alluded to earlier on, there's money in this pot, there's money in that pot, and if we get to a point where we need to use them, I don't believe that's the case in any of these particular funds. These are all absolutely necessary projects, and the project list has been pared down quite a bit from what it was before. Realistically, even at fully staffed, we couldn't complete all of the projects that were listed before.
Okay, good. That was my question. When I look at all these items and I'm thinking the size of your staff, I want to know that, I would think the committee would want to know, it's okay to want all these things, but think about everything that we've got going on. My question is, on all of these items that you've given us, one, can you get them done? And two, do you have the staff time?
Yes, I'm confident. I am confident that what you have listed here.
What I don't want to hear is I need temporary staff. I need all these things. You passed all these items, so now I need more staff to get it done. I don't want to be tricked into that conversation, that decision.
No, so
We
the
weren't.
vast majority of the projects are subletted out. They have different contractors. There is the water meter replacement that does rely on staff, but that one can, again, we make a bulk purchase of meters and that can slow when, you know, there's a resource pool. Most of, if not all of these, don't have a construction component that staff would be able to do anyway.
When this says on here lift station upgrades, tell me you're just putting in a new lift station. We're not doing upgrades, right?
A new lift station is about
Someone please tell me
$600,000.
that. How long is the
No,
lift
we are doing, yeah, we've talked to the engineers about that, and we're not doing a new lift station because as Sylvia is saying, a new lift station is about $6,000. We are doing a retrofit for $600,000. Sorry, $600,000. And we are doing a retrofit that will make the lift station work very, very well and get us really far down the road. So it is a retrofit. I believe did they get the project sheets for that?
Yes.
Okay.
I got a big note on here. This better be done.
Yeah, and it's not
Yeah,
34,000.
it is desperately
All right.
needed. It's not 34,000.
All right. Yeah, 6,000. What a deal. Get a new one. Don't repair it.
Yeah. 600,000.
Yeah, I've just got a big note on here that says just do it.
Yes.
It is
right.
desperately needed. We are working on that.
Sorry. So what we're going to commit is Charles Goyette and a couple of others at the last committee meeting had asked us for sort of a Gantt chart or a chart on how we're going to process this out, not having a construction manager and some of the other concerns that had been raised both here and at Public Works Committee. So we do have a new engineering contract and our engineers are stepping up to do construction management and those costs are embedded within each of the particular projects. But we have committed to bring you an execution sheet of how we believe we're going to accomplish these throughout the year.
All right. Hold on. If I had a binder, I wouldn't have all these papers here.
OpenGov. You have a digital binder.
OpenGov. I'm sick of OpenGov. All right, I'll get there. I'm slowly getting there. Trust me. All right, we're through the proposed projects, unless there's anything else there. Mark, did you have your hand up? I thought so. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I guess I'm still a little bit, maybe not confused, but I don't see, like the sheet that we were given in our mail folders with a summary of the projects. Some of the projects on here aren't on that list, and so I'm just curious, like, what is the final list of projects that are going to be sort of tackled? I guess I guess in terms of like the OpenGov, for example, like the Lone Oak Trail Street doesn't appear to be in the bronze budget, but it's in the project list. So I guess I don't have a good sense of like what actually is, going to be moved forward as a project next year. It looks like there's some
Susanna,
difference
can you
between.
tap to the project sheet? There you go.
Yeah, I thought it was, yeah, that sheet there.
That's the project sheet right there. What you saw as project rankings was everything that the committees deemed as important. What's on this project sheet and every sheet that you got is what we're committing to this year.
Okay, for example, like the Lone Oak one, maybe it's just a description. It hasn't been updated in OpenGov, but like that $371,000, it's zeroed out in OpenGov. So I didn't know if that was like a change or if that's something going to be reflected in future OpenGov update, or if it's something that.
Well, it's going to be in a future OpenGov update because we're building the capital improvement side of the budget now in OpenGov. We got here faster in the budget than we anticipated, and we're not done building the capital side. All of these would be capital projects at some point in time within OpenGov. I'm not sure what you're looking at. Susanna, can you pull up OpenGov?
It's just in the street.
And I can answer that one specifically. I can answer the one on Lone Oak. Yes, it has not been updated in OpenGov yet. That was a change that was made at the Public Works Committee meeting, that project to move forward.
Oh, okay.
And there is funding for all these projects.
Yes.
And that for like that cost increase from the proposed is from 318,000 to 371 or to 373,000. That's another change from Public Works as well after they reviewed the project.
That may be, the difference in that is going to be the wastewater line improvement that will be included with that project. So in the project sheet, I believe it's a total 373,000, and this should be just the portion that's from the street fund.
So within the wastewater, there's a differential between 318 and 373. Well, we will make sure that those project sheets show up in a sheet that's clear within OpenGov.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. I just want to make sure I was oriented correctly, but I appreciate that.
You guys beat us to capital budgeting.
Bring it. Isn't that what you said? Bring it. All right.
Hey, Michael, I wanted to make one note on that sheet of projects. I noticed that the lift station was left off of it.
What?
The lift station is currently underway. It should be
Okay.
shown.
Yeah, that'll start this year.
My comment about the lift station is it sure isn't going to be $34,000.
Not on a good day.
Also, one minor
One in
point.
Keller.
Go ahead, Charles.
It would be nice to have a total, a bottom line on a sheet like this particular one that shows all these. It's nice to have a bottom line total of this is what it all adds up to. You know, which in this case, if you add the lift station in there, it's like $2,068,000. You know, just kind of on our theme of it's good to see all these things rolled up so we know what the total amounts are.
Okay.
Well, lift stations this fiscal year, right? Sylvia?
I'm sorry?
Lift stations this fiscal year.
Yes, we are going to be expending that this fiscal.
Okay, everybody good? John? Yep. Okay.
Yep.
All right, we're down to
one more. Sorry, I do have one go back. Maybe looking back at the summary sheet.
Got it. Okay.
And maybe I'm just not quick enough to pick up where the number is coming from, but under the street fund that we were just looking at, the amount that we're expecting to spend, the 1.3 million, that seems below the even just for the project cost, not just even the street fund expenses. Am I missing something?
Yep, there's the 833 for that Ernest Robles.
Oh, it must be encumbered from that 270,000, or or I guess Sunset Trail is not in there, but is it? Because it's not counting, but it's not counting the 275,000 that's on the project sheet that we were looking at just before.
That's true. Yeah, Sunset Trail isn't there. Need to carry that over.
And increase it by 5K, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right, that makes more sense. Thanks.
Oh, yeah, good catch. Thank you. All right, we've got next week's meeting, utility rates, revised revenue projections. We'll visit the conversation again that we had earlier tonight. Bring back items. What I'd like to propose is if we're going to march back through, that's typically where we march back through from the beginning forward and see if there's anything that anybody wants to stop at. I know along the way there were parking lot items, there were items that were going to be looked at and brought back. I know Carolyn had just a few items from last week. So when we get to Public Works, we'll cover those at that time. I also see quarterly financial reports. It has been a while since we've done that. Is that, Regine, are we backed up on that? Or Suzanne?
Hold on.
We can hear you, Regine.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, cool. So Suzanne and I talked about that today. We want to move those to, instead of July 30th to the August 6th meeting, just because we're going to be in the middle of finalizing the budget, and it just August 6th meeting.
Okay, good. That was my thinking. That would kind of keep us on the budget conversation. If we could spin those out a little bit more, it would just keep us focused on that. We'll then go, depending on how that meeting goes, we may have one more meeting on the 30th. And at that time, we'll wrap it up with a pretty bow for the mayor. There is one more optional August 6th if we needed to cover anything. So in the utility rate conversation, I think there was a lot of proposals about changing rate structure and maybe charging more for different things. So I anticipate a lengthy conversation for that item, potentially between now and then.
So I think we started with that conversation on utility rates, and I'm happy to bring back some of the recommendations from planning and environmental.
Good.
That may be the only conversation that night. So, but yes, the expectation is to turn the budget over on July 30th.
Right.
We're all waiting with bated breath.
Excuse me, Michael?
Charles.
Yes, sorry, I need to go back to that last item that we added, that Sunset Valley Trail expenditure. And my memory's telling me that that was not included in our budget. That was not that item was not recommended by the Public Works. Alfonso or Doc, could you help me on that? Did we include that item?
7184.
Which of them? What is
7184, the Sunset Trail. The 7184, the Sunset Trail expenditure. I didn't think that was included, that we included that item.
We can certainly go back and listen to the Public Works.
Yeah. Also, John Belanca is part of the committee. He's there.
Oh,
but I don't remember
John?
Sunset Trail.
I recall that we took it out.
And also Melissa.
I don't recall.
I can answer that question real quick. So at the Public Works Committee meeting that we discussed that project, the committee did speak about taking it out of the budget. That was mostly due to the fact that Dr. Mockmel had not had a chance to look at Sunset Trail. So he has since looked at that area, and that is something we may discuss at the meeting on Wednesday with the Public Works Committee to address that issue as well, because he has had a chance to see that since then.
So we shouldn't include it then tonight, which we did, right? We rolled it in.
We rolled it in. Can we just put a note there to come back on when we're doing our go backs? And Carolyn, can you update us on that as to whether we should include it or not?
Yes, I will.
Great. Does that work, Charles?
Yes, thank you.
Good catch. Oh, I had a question on the Jones Road project. Thank you for that. Just while I was thinking about it, just real quick, I won't keep us, but that was on the, hold on. On the water utility fund for the Jones Road ASD master meter. One of the things you talk about in the cost estimate does not include easement acquisition. Does ASD have that easement acquisition already? Is the
It would be an easement. it would be an easement the city would likely have to purchase from AISD. And given my experience with them on a sidewalk issue, they're going to want to be paid for an easement. So I believe that is part of the discussion. We are in talks with the city of Austin regarding that contractual obligation and looking at different parts of the water contract regarding that.
I don't see you doing this next year, do you? Really?
No.
There's no way. You are not going to get an easement in 1 year. I don't care how hard you try.
But there are some things within the contract we're contractually obligated to do, and one of them is to show movement. But the City of Austin folks, there are new folks on this particular project, which helps me because we're both starting from sort of a green standpoint. And I have asked the question, what was the benefit to the City of Sunset Valley? Because normally utility funds are enterprise funds and make money, right? That's why we want to accommodate and acquire all the customers that we can. That's not the case for Sunset Valley. So I was asking the question as to who, what, when, and where. And they've been very helpful in providing and piecing together some historical for me. And if Terry's listening, I also reached out to him today. I sent you an email, Terry. Same thing for Stearns and the same thing for Countrywide.
Yes, I got that email. And I plan to get back to you.
Okay, thanks.
Why is it again that what was the impetus for this project?
That's a good question. I'm trying to piece all of those things. As far as I can tell from my conversations with the City of Austin, it's the desire for Sunset Valley to have all of the customers within its jurisdiction be Sunset Valley customers. But again, from a standpoint of being a utility and the revenue generation, normally utilities are enterprise funds. If that isn't the case for us and there is no benefit, I'm just trying to understand the pieces. So I cannot give you a complete answer at this point. So I'm relying on some of the Public Works Committee members and some other historicals.
I can give some information.
Melissa.
Yeah, it was many years back when we redid this contract, and my memory is that Katie said that the City of Austin wanted the City of Sunset Valley to have all the accounts within there. It wasn't us that asked for it. It was the City of Austin that asked us to do that. That's my memory of what happened at a councilman. And that's a lot of years ago when we redid that. And then we slowly have been making progress towards it. But it was an Austin ask, which is my memory. And I'll just give you that.
Well, Sylvia, I think you're on point there. Unless it's in some contract that we're obligated to, or we're not going to get water. I mean, tying up 156,000, we can use that somewhere else within the water fund. I would think that would be more on a scale of need as opposed to like, right? That's kind of what I'm hearing. I think is the city would like that. Well, why? And it doesn't even include a right-of-way acquisition. So that 156 really isn't going to be the right number anyway.
No, more than likely it's not going to be the right number. Austin does have a longer term plan to, in the next 20 years, to wean itself off of being the water purveyor in our area and asking all of the smaller cities to find their own water sources. So I'm just, from a longer term perspective, I'm cognizant of the amount of water AISD would require. And so if we are on a path where we need to find our own water source, why would we take on these large customers?
Yeah. Well, to spend $150,000, $200,000 on, I'm not sure I get it.
Yep, I'm not sure I get it either. That's why I'm asking.
Okay. Anybody else?
Well, it's consistent with that goal, right? If they want to offload, that's within our purview, and so they want to first make us all of what we are and then offload us. And so that would make sense if I was them from their perspective. So I'm just leaving that in there.
Yeah, actually they are, Austin Water is an enterprise system, so they stand to benefit more from serving AISD than Sunset Valley would.
I thought we had this discussion on those two projects initially when we were talking about the reduction or essential services, and we dropped them then because they're not, neither one of them are essential.
I don't know. So you're looking to see and substantiate the claim that we really even need to do this?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. Anybody else? Have we had enough fun?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman?
Alfonso?
Yeah, let me, 3 weeks ago, I mentioned about the files or the binders that Sylvia, she promised to us. And when I saw my binder.
There you are.
Yeah, but this is the binder that she sent to me. So this is the binder that maybe you have. Now, I was expecting these kind of binders. So I don't know when, but perhaps soon we will have that. When I mentioned to you that I made this is that I made. But I hope that in the following 2 sessions more than we will have, perhaps before we will send that to the mayor, we will have a nice binder that will help us to understand much better open government. That is a nice job, but still, for me, it's incredible the hard copy. If I don't have the hard copy, I cannot be working. And looking the letters that I can see in this computer, I try to go to my biggest screen, 55, 56 inches, in order to read that much better. But going to the point, I hope that Sylvia, that she offered to us some binders. In reality, all of that folders at the end will be one binder. If she gave it to us that, I think I will be more than happy.
I'm sorry, I didn't take the binder comment literally. I thought it was a binder of the sheets, all of the sheets. We will get official binders.
Yeah, thank Sylvia. This is that I try to tell you because you don't believe how nice was when all the committee, we have our binders and we were reading the same book, everybody. And perhaps sometimes the memory is not very good, but when you go to your binder and you make your notes, it's incredible. This is why. But I think that we have a better communication than we had 2.5 months ago. Now it's very, very productive, this kind of meetings. Thank you to everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a real challenge to figure out how to hit that middle ground, Alfonso, between using OpenGov and having those sheets to work from. I think we're struggling trying to figure out what that's going to look like.
Okay.
Thank you. Very well. Good to see you. I'm glad you could join us at the end of the meeting.
I don't want to show you my face, my mustache, and my hair.
Committee members, it's like, yeah, we're really people.
Yeah, this is the late 60s, good friend. I am from the late 60s, so this is why.
Looking good.
You look good, man.
Yeah, thank you.
We should also see John's got the hair face going. Terry's got it. Alfonso's got it. I think Charles Goyette said he's got it going. So I'm not doing the hair thing. Too much work. Come to the dark side. You'll be happier.
Oh, yeah.
Al Gore would be proud. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Anything else tonight? Staff, have we covered everything?
We're covered.
All right, you guys are awesome. Thanks for taking care of us, and we'll see you guys next week.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, that's right. We need a motion, yeah. Mark made the
Let's
motion.
make a motion.
I think there was a second somewhere.
Second,
yeah, from Alfonso. Any other discussion? No? Okay. Formalities, I don't do that.
Have a good weekend, guys.
goodbye, everybody.
Y'all take care.
Yeah.